Across the Nile Valley and the shattered plains of Gaza, the struggle for control over water, over freedom, over dignity continues to define the region's fate. In Cairo, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Sudan's General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan reaffirmed their rejection of any unilateral actions by Ethiopia regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, a project that may promise energy for one nation, but threatens survival for millions downstream. It's a confrontation not just about water, but about sovereignty, law, and the fragile trust that binds nations along the Nile. And beyond the river, another contest for control unfolds, this time inside Israel's prisons. Thousands of Palestinians have emerged from behind bars through prisoner swap deals, hardened and politicized, many now viewed as the next generation of leaders. As one front of resistance moves from the battlefields to the negotiating table, another evolves within prison walls. Tonight we examine how power in this region flows through conflict, from the turbulent waters of the Blue Nile to the human crucibles of Israel's detention systems. I'm Henny Saif. Let's get in focus. In Cairo, President al-Sisi and General al-Burhan stood shoulder to shoulder, rejecting any unilateral Ethiopian measures over the Blue Nile. Both leaders stressed that Addis Ababa's continued filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Africa's largest hydroelectric project, violates international law and undermines regional stability. Sudan, already suffering from devastating floods blamed on uncoordinated dam releases, echoed Egypt's warnings. Together, Cairo and Khartoum called once again for a legally binding agreement on the dam's filling and operation, an appeal Ethiopia has resisted for more than a decade. The question remains, can regional diplomacy secure fair water sharing before tensions turn irreversible? To unpack the implications of this renewed Nile alliance, we're joined up by Meki El Mughrabi, the international relations analyst. Mr. Mughrabi, thank you very much for joining us. What strategic significance do you see in this Cairo meeting between President al-Sisi and al-Burhan at this particular moment?
Yes, al-Burhan al-Sisi meeting comes in when Sudan now in a decisive crossroad. Yes, the Sudanese army is gaining more power and more lands on the ground, but still the unhumanitarian siege around the Fashi, the humanitarian situation in other areas of Sudan. Also, Sudan needs diplomacy to bring more friends closer to Sudan to support Sudan, and Egypt has a big role on that. Also, the meeting came just one day after Sharm el-Sheikh summit, and Sharm el-Sheikh summit has proven again and again the Egyptian leverage in the region and the Egyptian regional importance, because it was very clear, even in Gaza peace, you cannot enforce any agreement without Egypt. You need whatever agreement that you have, you need Egypt for the full enforcement and safe enforcement for the agreement. And that means Egypt is the biggest player now in the Middle East and also in the region of the East Africa. And this is why Sudan needs Egypt now, and the meeting is very important.
Well, how does this now alignment reshape the regional balance of power on the Nile, especially after the years of stalled negotiations?
Sudan and Egypt are close together in the issue of Nile, not just for politics, but also because both countries are downstream countries, and that appeared clearly in Entebbe agreement. Both countries against this agreement from long time, and Ethiopia are playing a game to promote for this agreement among other Nile Basin countries, and the latest one was South Sudan. But that doesn't work because the historical agreements are protecting the full rights for the downstream countries, Sudan and Egypt. But still, the solution is negotiation and talks. Sudan and Egypt, they push together their against Entebbe agreement, and Ethiopia supported this agreement and other countries, but still we need more talks to solve this issue.
Well, Ethiopia insists on its sovereign right to development. How can that then coexist with the downstream nations' right to water security? How can they balance the right for development for Ethiopia and safeguarding Sudan and Egypt's water share?
First of all, we need to confirm for all African nations and all the world, Sudan and Egypt, they never stood against Ethiopian rights in development, in using the Nile water for its own development. So the position of Sudan and Ethiopia is supportive for development of all African nations and their neighbor Ethiopia. But Ethiopia made mistakes in using its rights in the water, and now here's the situation. We have the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, and we don't have any mechanism to share information that can make Sudan safe and Egypt safe. And now Sudan is facing a very tough season, and the cooperation and the coordination between the two countries are not helping that. But still, I can say that we have some good times before. I can remember I was in Addis Ababa at that time as a freelance correspondent when Sisi visited Addis Ababa, and he addressed the Ethiopian parliament. And I wrote at that time the pharaoh among the nobles from the Aksumite Empire. So I just to put the history together. And at that time, there was a good spirit between the three countries, but we lost that. We need to bring that again, and that is start with Ethiopia to stop doing unilateral action regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
Mr. Mughrabi, now, given Sudan's fragile internal situation, can Khartoum sustain a unified stance with Cairo, or might it face pressure then to compromise?
Luckily, yes, we went through very tough time in Sudan, and it was very fragile situation, but luckily now the situation is better than it was. And now the government is back to Khartoum, and just a few times that you will face, you will find different Sudan that can stand and no compromise. Actually, this issue, even during tough time for Sudan, there is no compromise on the issue of the Nile and the rights in the Nile. We need to stand together, but also I can count on Sudan on making a good role in having more mediation efforts to stop the external actors from playing with African countries. My advice always for African countries that whenever you have disputes, this dispute will witness an external actor from outside the continent to use countries against each other. And that thing, we should stop it, and Sudan should play a role in this.
Well, do you think, sir, the quadripartite mechanism's upcoming meeting in Washington could provide an international push or influence towards a political settlement?
Sudan opposed having a big role for the Quad mechanism, but that wasn't in a strong tone, because we know that in the Quad mechanism there is Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and both those countries are standing with Sudan now. But still, the multilateral intervention is not welcomed in Sudan. Because if you have multi-party intervention and Sudan out of that, and other countries may impose a player to be within this multi-party intervention, and that cannot be okay with Sudan. So that Sudan counts on direct and bilateral relation with Egypt, good and bilateral relation with Saudi Arabia, and that already existed with Egypt and Saudi Arabia. And we need to continue in direct talks with United States, and that already happened in Zurich and happening now indirectly. And also we need to fix Sudan's United Arab Emirates relation, and before that there was an Egyptian initiative or mediation, and that could be something delayed, but still we need to play with all, and we need to have good relation with the bilateral relation with the members of the Quad.
Well, many experts do share your concern and warn of a creeping regionalization of the GERD issue. Do you foresee wider African or Arab involvement in mediation?
Historically, the Arab nation stand with Egypt and Sudan, and I can say that most of the Arab nations standing with Sudan and Egypt. We need that because I can tell you in Africa now the image of this dispute and conflict is not in the correct way that we can say that Africa could be balanced. We need more efforts with Africa. We need more efforts to tell them they should look at this dispute with an African eye, not to be used by external actors.
Yes. Well, I have to ask this. I mean, assuming a bad scenario or worst case scenario, if diplomacy fails, what long-term consequences could this have for the political stability and environmental security of the region?
That is a good question, but still a tough question, because no one wants this scenario to happen.
Of course.
Yes, all people, they want diplomacy to win, and the mediation to win, and to tell the world another story that Sudan and Ethiopia and Egypt came together and have a good agreement. Mm-hmm. But I think that scenario could happen. My advice is that we need to fix the problem of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the problem of having not a good level of coordination, or at least sometimes zero coordination between the three countries. That could make this situation happen, and that could make your tough question real.
Mr. El-Mughrabi, thank you very much, sir, for your insights. The Nile has always been a source of life, yet today it risks becoming a source of discord. From the struggle over the Nile's waters to the struggle for freedom in Israel's prisons, both reveal how control, whether over nature or people, defines the region's enduring quest for justice. The Financial Times reports that thousands of Palestinians released from Israeli prisons this week may soon reshape the future of their national movement. While Israel brands them as terrorists, among Palestinians they are hailed as patriots, graduates of what many call Hadarim University, where ideology, endurance and leadership are forged behind bars. Figures like Yahya Sinwar, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and the newly freed Abdel Nasser Isa illustrate how Israel's detention system, intended to weaken resistance, has paradoxically become its breeding ground. From the cells of solitary confinement emerge men who command movements, shape strategies, and in many cases determine the course of the conflict itself. To explore how these prisons have transformed into incubators of political identity and leadership, we're joined by Ambassador Hisham Youssef, the senior advisor to the European Institute of Peace. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for being with us. How has Israel's prison system, meant to suppress the resistance, evolved into a school for leadership for the Palestinians?
Well, there is a rule of thumb. As long as there is occupation, there will be resistance. So this is a historic fact. And I don't think that this will be different in as far as the Palestinian cause is concerned. But we also have to add that resistance has to be done in accordance to international law. So it is not that resistance is allowed to do anything they wish. No, it has to comply with international law, particularly since they are the weaker party. They are under occupation. But what Israel has done to Palestinians in relation to prisons is also, one of the harshest measures in recent history regarding occupation. Millions of Palestinians have been in jail, many of them without trial, and many of them also with secret trials without any possibility for defense to know what are the accusations about.
Well, does the repeated exchange of thousands of prisoners for a few hostages create a political economy of captivity that sustains the conflict?
Well, the conflict is sustained because Israel is an occupying power that does not want to relinquish the land. So it is as simple as that. And I think they are still adamant on trying to see how to maintain the land. And this is why they are not supporting the two-state solution. They are not supporting any withdrawal. And all what they're trying to do is to see how they can annex more land. And sadly, this is also to a certain extent supported by the United States, that especially this administration that keeps arguing that Israel is too small and there has to be a way to see how it can become bigger. And as far as I am concerned, and as far as international law is concerned, this is not possible in the context of all the resolutions that was adopted by the Security Council, by the General Assembly, and advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. The land that was occupied in June 1967 is occupied territories and has to be freed for the Palestinians to establish their own state and for them to exercise their right to self-determination.
Well, to what extent then has Israel's reliance on administrative detention radicalized a new generation, many generations, and deepened the collective Palestinian identity?
Well, as you can see, we have witnessed in the last 2 years how Palestinians are adamant on not leaving their land. And despite all what happened, they still were returning to Gaza, despite the fact that they know that all their homes were destroyed. And speaking about radicalization, I think this is a very important issue because also the Trump plan is framed in the context of de-radicalization. And also, I don't think he was talking about Israelis. He was talking only about Palestinians, while the whole world knows that the current Israeli coalition is one of the most extreme and one of the most radicalized, and their public statements are racist and reflect a level of discrimination against Palestinians that is unprecedented. And this is why there are a number of countries, European and other countries, that have imposed sanctions on these ministers that they see as radical and they see as extremists, and they see that they should not be allowed to enter their countries. So this is important. Now, the question is, okay, how do you deal with radicalization?
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, radicalization will not be addressed in an effective way as long as occupation is there. And you have 2 million Palestinians in Gaza who have witnessed for the last 2 years, hell on earth. And it's not that before that they were living in comfort and prosperity. No, they were also under siege for the last since 2007. So this situation cannot but breed radicalization and extremism because of the dire situation in which the Palestinians have been living for decades. And by the way, this also applies to the West Bank because the West Bank also is living under very dire circumstances with all kinds of closures, with all kinds of demolition of houses, with all kinds of settler violence, and so on.
Well, the Financial Times describes figures like Abdel Nasser Isa as emerging symbols of unity. Israel, in effect, is creating its future adversaries through incarceration. What are they going to do about it? Because if it is not resolved anytime soon, it's a decade-old story. It's a decade-long story. It's the same thing that keeps happening over and over again.
Well, as you well know, they have, you mentioned Sinwar, they have the complex of the Sinwar, particularly as a result of the fact that he is considered the mastermind behind October 7th. And he was released in the context of a previous deal in exchange for Shalit. So they want to make sure that this time around they will not be releasing prisoners that would be able to, go back to strengthening the resistance and maybe making attacks on Israel in the future. So they are extremely worried about this precedent, and they want to make sure that this is not the case. And this is why the security apparatus in Israel is extremely worried. But also they have no choice because they wanted to get their hostages back. And this has been the pattern since Shalit. And as you mentioned, in exchange for many Israeli hostages and prisoners in return for Palestinian prisoners as well.
Then in effect, how does this dynamic expose the collapse of traditional diplomacy and the failure to create legitimate, independent Palestinian political leadership?
Well, it proves both a success and failure because the exchange took place, whether it's Shalit or now. So there is an agreement in relation to what the steps should be. But what you are saying is also extremely important, which is that this cycle will continue as long as occupation continues. And this is what Israel does not get because all what they aim for is surrender. They think that the Palestinians should surrender. But the message that is coming from the Palestinians, whether it's from Gaza in the last 2 years or in the West Bank, simply is we will not surrender. So it's a battle of wills. Now, this is where the international community comes in. And this is where we hope that President Trump will put pressure to bear in order for this imbalance to be rectified by reaching an agreement that is equitable, just, and satisfies the interests of both sides by establishing a Palestinian state and providing Israel with security at the same time. And the Arab countries have said time and again that they are willing for heavy lifting in order to help this process because they want this conflict to end once and for all, but they want it to end in accordance to international law, not in accordance to an Israeli hope that they can enlarge their country or for them to expect that surrender will take place. By the way, Israel is acting in this manner in relation to the whole region. They are also hoping that Lebanon would surrender, including Hezbollah, that Syria would surrender, that Yemen would surrender, that Iran would surrender, and so on. So this is the approach. The approach is not to try to reach understandings that are reasonable and equitable in a manner that would achieve stability, although it has been proven by Arab countries that they abide by what they signed. And this was the case in Egypt, in the peace treaty with Egypt, in the peace treaty with Jordan, and even more recently in the agreement that was brokered by the United States between Israel and Lebanon on the demarcation of the maritime borders between the two countries. And it was brokered by the United States. So Israel should understand, and the United States should try to work on solutions that are acceptable by both sides in different conflicts in order for peace to prevail in the region.
Your Excellency, could these released prisoners, shaped by endurance and ideology, form the nucleus of a post-war Palestinian political movement, or is it too much to expect?
No, it's not too much to expect. As a matter of fact, this will happen. As a matter of fact, it happened already when Abu Mazen signed a decree to convene elections in 2021. 94% of those eligible to vote registered. And the political environment, both in the West Bank and in Gaza, was quite constructive. And there were all kinds of political movements that started preparing for elections. It was postponed because Israel did not allow Palestinians to conduct elections in East Jerusalem, which has become more sensitive, particularly after the U.S. moved its embassy to Jerusalem and so on. So this happened. Now, Abu Mazen also indicated that he intends to convene elections within 1 year. We will see how the situation will evolve. But of course, now the situation is not ripe for elections, but the Palestinians have to work in order to ensure that elections take place. And I am confident that those who came out of prison will play a crucial role on the political scene for the Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. So when a prison becomes the crucible of national identity, what moral responsibility falls on the international community then to redefine justice?
Well, as a matter of fact, the effort that was done, mainly led by Saudi Arabia and France in the United Nations with the help of many Arab countries, including Egypt, Jordan, and many others, and also at the international level, a number of European and other countries helped in this process, reached a document that can be considered a roadmap for the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So there are efforts that are underway. Now, also, the president of France held a meeting a few days ago in relation to the future of Gaza. All this effort, we hope that the momentum is kept, because there are fears that once the guns stop and the bloodshed ends, perhaps countries would be distracted by all other kinds of other priorities and concerns and considerations. But we hope that this momentum would be kept in order for us to cross a threshold that would allow negotiations to restart and for us to start working on the end of conflict rather than only limiting the situation to how Gaza can recover and how Gaza can be reconstructed, but also deal with the fundamental issue before us, which is ending the conflict once and for all.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about the Palestinians who are still in Israeli prisons? What is the hope for them then?
Well, that's a tough question, because this either will await another type of conflict, or it will be done in the context of an arrangement that allows progress in peace. Mm-hmm. So this is the dilemma that also is facing Israel. And we'll see how the situation evolves. President Trump has been indicating that he is serious and he wants the situation to advance, not only Gaza, and he indicated in no uncertain terms, this is not only about Gaza, this is about peace. Mm-hmm. And President Trump, of course, has the capacity to put pressure to bear on all kinds of players. He was instrumental in reaching the ceasefire and the arrangement that was achieved in the last few days. And I hope that this momentum will not run out of steam in the coming months.
Ambassador Hisham Yusuf, the senior advisor to the European Institute of Peace, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. From the walls of Israel's prisons emerges a deeper truth. When captivity becomes a way of life, resistance becomes a way of identity. The Nile and Gaza are worlds apart, yet their stories converge in the struggle for sovereignty. Whether over a river or a prison cell, each act of control echoes across borders, testing the endurance of nations and the resilience of people. That was In Focus. I'm Henny Saif, and thank you for watching.